Firstly, welcome to our literary journey. Hello, dear lovers of good stories. Today I bring you a narrative that touches the heart and awakens the soul. A story of love, dignity, and overcoming that takes place in the Brazilian interior of the early 20th century. The Fourth Bride is a tale about second chances, about how true love can flourish even in the most barren lands of solitude. It is a story about brave decisions, about standing firm when everyone flees, about building happiness upon the ruins of tragedy. Tell me in the comments, from which city are you watching this? I love to know where our readers and listeners come from. If this introduction has already touched your heart, don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more exciting stories like this. Your support is fundamental to continue bringing quality literature. Georgia 1903. Place: interior of Goiás, vicinity of São Sebastião do Araguaia. And now let me guide you through the dusty paths of time, where each word is a sigh from the past, and each page reveals the secrets of the human heart. Joaquim Batista's house rose like a solitary prayer against the infinite sky of Goiás. Built upon rocks that defied time, it loomed dangerously close to the cliff, as if it balanced between life and the abyss, between hope and despair. These were the first days of April 1903, and rain still dripped from the red tiles, forming small streams that serpentined through the soaked terrain. The air carried the humid perfume of turned earth and the distant echo of a past that refused to be forgotten. Joaquim, at 33 years old, moved through the house like a ghost among his own memories. His calloused hands, marked by woodwork, trembled slightly as they touched the table he had built for Rosa, the table where she embroidered, while Isabel played at her feet with straw dolls. The tragedy had occurred 3 weeks before. A torrential rain, cruel and implacable, had collapsed the hillside, taking with it the original house, and with it, everything that gave meaning to Joaquim's life. Rosa, his wife with hair like golden honey, and Isabel, a 5-year-old girl who laughed like a little bird at dawn, had departed on a stormy night when the earth betrayed and the world collapsed. Now, in this new house, built 20 meters farther but still dangerously close to the abyss, Joaquim walked among shadows of a lost love. The proximity to the cliff was no accident. It was his way of remaining close to them, a feeling that he still shared the same danger, the same frontier between existing and disappearing. The wind blew through the cracks in the wood, bringing with it the whisper of trees and something more, a distant promise that life like spring always returns. But Joaquim still didn't know how to listen to that promise. Who would imagine that that lonely house, built between courage and desperation, was destined to shelter 3 more hearts before finding its true owner? 8 years had passed like dry leaves carried by the wind. The house continued there, defying both the cliff and Joaquim's solitude. The carpenter had become a man of deep silences, but his hands continued creating beauty in wood, dresses, tables, cribs that other couples would fill with children. The yellowed pages of the Correio de Goiás had carried, during those years, the same discreet advertisement: honest widower, established carpenter, seeks wife for Christian home, own property. Interested parties write to Joaquim Batista, São Sebastião do Araguaia, Goiás. 3 women responded to the call. 3 hearts brave enough to cross distances in search of new love. 3 stories that ended in the same place, the dirt road that led back to the station. The first arrived in 1905. Clara was her name. She came from Formosa with a cedar trunk and dreams embroidered in her trousseau. Joaquim received her with the courtesy of a well-educated man, offered her fresh water, and showed her the house. Clara had walked to the back window, and upon seeing the abyss that opened right there, so close it seemed possible to touch it, she paled like candle wax. She left the same day, murmuring excuses about a sick aunt in Uberaba. The second came in 1908. Antonia brought with her the experience of a widow who knew life's harshness. Daughter of ranchers from northern Goiás, she feared neither work nor solitude, but when she saw the house kissing the edge of the precipice, when she heard the wind howl through the loose stones down below, she understood that there were fears beyond those she had learned to face. She left at dawn, leaving only a polite letter and a lavender perfume that took days to dissipate. The third arrived in 1910. Benedita was young, almost still a child, sent by the family as a last resort against poverty. Joaquim perceived the fear in her eyes even before she saw the house. When the girl encountered the cliff, she began to cry like a child lost in the woods. Joaquim himself paid for her return trip, placing in her hands the passage money and a wooden doll he had carved for Isabel years before. With each departure, Joachim felt closer to the abyss that surrounded his house. It wasn't just geography that drove those women away. It was the weight of mourning he carried, the dangerous proximity between life and death that he had chosen as his dwelling. But destiny, like the rain that always returns, was preparing a fourth arrival. And this time, it would be a woman who knew abysses far beyond those excavated by earth. In Goiânia, at the beginning of 1911, Maria Conceição Santos woke every morning before the sun rose. Her 26 years seemed to carry the weight of decades, not from age, but from the disappointments that had accumulated like dust on the furniture of her life. Donna Benedita's boarding house was a place of passage for souls in transit, impoverished merchants, retired teachers, seamstresses like Maria, who survived on crumbs of work. Maria's room was small, with a window that faced a yard where chickens scratched among clumps of dried grass. There, under the yellowish light of a kerosene lamp, she spent the early hours sewing patches and darning holed socks. Her hands, delicate but marked by the needle, were capable of producing embroidery that rivaled French work. She had learned the trade from her mother, who died when Maria turned 18, leaving her orphaned and mistress of a skill that should have guaranteed her livelihood. For 3 years, Maria had built a respectable clientele among Goiânia's well-to-do families. Her embroidery adorned baptism dresses, bridal trousseaux, tablecloths for special occasions. The work at the Amaral house, a family of prosperous merchants, was her particular pride, until everything collapsed like a house of cards on a windy day. Donna Clotilde Amaral, wife of the city's most influential merchant, had hired Maria to embroider a complete trousseau for her youngest daughter. For 2 weeks, Maria had worked in the house, creating pieces of a beauty that made the other maids whisper in admiration. It was work that would earn her enough money to rent her own house and open a workshop. In the last week of work, an emerald from Donna Clotilde's collection disappeared. The jewel, an antique brooch inherited from her grandmother, vanished from the mistress's room. Without proof, but with the venomous conviction of class prejudice, Donna Clotilde accused Maria of theft. The words still echoed in Maria's memory like lashes. People like you always end up showing their true nature. The poor are thieves by necessity. Maria had protested, had offered that they search her things, had sworn by her mother's memory that she had never touched the jewel. But the word of a poor seamstress was worth nothing against that of a society lady. The brooch appeared days later among the clothes of a maid who confessed to the theft, but it was too late. Maria's reputation had been destroyed like torn fabric. The other clients cancelled orders. Poisoned whispers followed her through the streets. Doors closed before she could even offer her services. In a matter of weeks, Maria had gone from respected artisan to social pariah, surviving on patches paid in pennies by families who barely had enough to eat. It was on one of those cold January mornings, while darning a sock with a hole the size of a coin, that Maria found the newspaper left by a guest in the boarding house's common room. Among the ads for land and animals, a small text caught her attention. Honest widower, established carpenter, seeks wife for Christian home. Maria read the ad 3 times, feeling something stir in her chest. It wasn't hope, not yet, but perhaps it was the embryo of a possibility. In a place where no one knew her story, where she could start over as the honest woman she had always been, far from whispers and judging looks. That night, under the trembling light of the lamp, Maria Conceição Santos wrote a letter that would forever change the course of 2 lonely lives. Maria's letter reached Joachim on a February morning, when the sun still struggled to pierce through the low clouds that clung to the mountains. The postman, Senor Domingos, delivered it with the same solemn air of one who carries divine messages, for in the solitude of the interior, each correspondence carried the weight of a revelation. Joachim held the envelope with trembling hands, not from nervousness, but from the caution of one who had already learned that hopes can shatter like fine glass. The paper was simple, but the calligraphy revealed education and care. The letters curved with elegance, each word chosen like one who selects flowers for a bouquet. Mr. Joaquim Batista, may the Lord's peace be with you. I read your advertisement in the newspaper and come respectfully to express interest in getting to know you better. I am Maria Conceição Santos, 26 years old, orphan, seamstress by profession. I have neither family nor possessions, only my hands that know how to create beauty from thread and line. I seek an honest home where I can restart my life. If you consider it convenient, you may write to me at Donna Benedita's boarding house, Rua das Flores, 47, Goiânia. May God bless you, Maria Conceição. The letter's simplicity touched Joaquim more deeply than any eloquence could have. Here was a woman who promised neither eternal love nor guaranteed happiness. She offered only her working hands and the courage to start over. There was a raw honesty in those words that echoed his own experience with life. Joaquim responded the same day, sitting at the table Rosa had used for her embroidery. His handwriting was less elegant, marked by the incomplete education of one who had learned more with his hands than with books, but it carried the same honesty. Donna Maria Conceição, your letter received with joy. I am a simple man carpenter, widower for 8 years. I have my own house and honest work. If you wish to know these parts, I send passage money. Life here is simple but dignified. I await your decision. Joaquim Batista. Along with the letter, Joaquim sent enough money for the train trip to Annapolis and by cart to São Sebastião do Araguaia. It was a gesture of faith in a world where trust had become rare currency. Maria received the response on a rainy March afternoon. The passage money represented more than she had earned in 2 months of mending. For a few moments, the temptation to use that money to survive a few more weeks spoke louder than the uncertain prospect of a journey into the unknown. But when she looked out the window and saw Donna Benedita sweeping the yard, with the resignation of one who accepts that life is a succession of equal days, Maria understood that staying would be accepting a slow death of the soul. She preferred to face the unknown than to wither in the certainty of mediocrity. The night before departure, Maria folded her few clothes into a flowered fabric bundle, stored her sewing instruments in a little wooden box that had been her mother's, and tied around her neck a cord with a small silver cross, the only inheritance she had left. Donna Benedita cried as if losing a daughter when Maria said goodbye. Child, the old lady told her, you have a heart of gold and blessed hands. If that man doesn't see that, come back here because there will always be a place for you. But Maria Conceição Santos didn't know she was about to become the 4th woman to climb that dirt road toward the house on the edge of the abyss, and that, unlike the other 3, she carried in her soul a type of courage forged in despair itself. The train that departed from Goiânia on a March morning in 1911 carried more than passengers. It carried destinies intertwined like threads. In a loom, Maria Conceição occupied a 3rd-class seat, her modest bundle in her lap, her eyes fixed on the landscape that paraded beyond the dusty window. During the 8-hour journey to Annapolis, the world gradually transformed. Houses became more scattered, fields more wild, mountains more imposing. With each kilometer, Maria felt herself entering not just a new geography, but a new possibility of existing. At the Annapolis station, a middle-aged man awaited her with a sign where her name was written in trembling letters. It was Zé Mineiro, a cart driver who made the journey between the railroad and the interior settlements. His sun-weathered face carried the simple wisdom of one who knows all the roads and their stories. "Are you the young lady for Joaquim Batista?" he asked, removing his hat in a gesture of rural courtesy. When Maria confirmed, he shook his head with an expression difficult to decipher. "Well then, let's get going. We still have 5 hours of road ahead." The cart was simple but clean, pulled by 2 gentle burros accustomed to the routine of long distances. Maria settled on the wooden bench, and soon the vehicle began to sway in the measured rhythm of the dirt road. The smell of dust mixed with the perfume of wildflowers that dotted the landscape. It was during the 3rd hour of travel, when the sun began to incline toward the west, that Zé Mineiro broke the respectful silence he had maintained since departure. "It's none of my business," he said, without taking his eyes off the road. "But you are brave, ma'am." "How so?" asked Maria, intrigued by the solemn tone of the cart driver. Zé Mineiro spat to the side and adjusted the reins better. "You're the 4th young lady I've taken to Joaquim's house. The other 3, well, they all returned the same day. 2 didn't even spend the night." Maria's heart jumped in her chest like a startled bird. "Why? Isn't he an honest man?" "Joaquim Batista is the most upright man I know," Zé Mineiro quickly responded. "Hard-working, respectful, true Christian. The problem isn't him." The cart driver paused as if weighing how much he should reveal. "It's the house." "What about the house?" Zé Mineiro pulled the reins, slowing the burro's pace. Ahead, a stream crossed the road, and he maneuvered carefully to find the best crossing point. Only after they were on the other side did he respond. "The house sits on the edge of a cliff, ma'am. So close it's frightening. They say that's where his first wife died in a downpour that took house and all. Joaquim rebuilt in the same place, only even closer to the abyss." Zé Mineiro looked at her sideways. "The other young ladies, When they saw that, well, they understood there are men who choose to live dangerously close to death. Maria remained silent, absorbing the revelation. The wind blew through the hair that escaped from her headscarf, bringing the smell of damp earth and the promise of rain. On the horizon, dark clouds accumulated like premonitions. "And you, ma'am," continued Zeminero, "are you going to stay?" Maria Conceição contemplated the road ahead, which stretched like a question mark through the landscape. She thought of Donna Benedita sweeping the boarding-house yard, of the poisonous whispers that followed her through Goiânia's streets, of the solitude that consumed her like slow fire. Then she thought of Joaquim Batista, a man who had chosen to live on the edge of the abyss out of fidelity to his morning, and understood there were different types of courage. "Mr. Zeminero," she said finally, "whoever has already lived at the bottom of the well isn't afraid of heights." The cart driver smiled for the first time in the journey, and the burros resumed their firm pace toward the encounter that would forever change the story of that solitary house. The house appeared in the distance like a question mark against the darkening sky. Maria Conceição first saw the straight lines of the red roof, then the light wooden walls, and finally, when the cart approached close enough, she understood why the other three women had fled. The construction literally balanced on the edge of a precipice, so close to the abyss it seemed to defy the laws of physics and common sense. The cliff opened right there, a deep gash in the earth where a stream ran invisible far below, its music transformed into a ghostly whisper by distance. But Maria, who had already learned to live with her own internal abysses, didn't feel the paralyzing terror that had dominated the others. Instead, she perceived in the house a melancholic beauty, as if it were a poem of stone and wood, written in the language of danger and nostalgia. Joaquim Batista waited for her on the porch, and Maria immediately understood why this man had chosen to live on the edge of the precipice. There was in his dark eyes a depth that mirrored the geographical abyss. He was someone who knew the geography of loss as intimately as he knew the design of each board of his house. At 33 years old, Joaquim maintained the upright posture of one who hadn't completely bent under the weight of tragedy. His black hair was beginning to show silver threads at the temples, and his hands, which rose to help her down from the cart, were the hands of an artisan, strong, precise, capable of creating beauty from raw wood. "Donna Maria Conceição," he said, and his voice carried the solemnity of a man who had learned to weigh each word. "Welcome." Maria accepted the extended hand and felt an electric current run through her fingers. It wasn't instant passion, it was something deeper, the recognition of two souls that had navigated similar storms and arrived at the same port of solitude. "Mr. Joaquim Batista," she replied, "I thank you for your hospitality." Zeminero unloaded Maria's modest luggage and refused the extra money Joaquim offered. "This one here is special," he murmured in the carpenter's ear before leaving. "She has the eyes of someone who has already faced storms and wasn't intimidated." Joaquim led Maria through the house with the respectful courtesy of a host who understood the vulnerability of the situation. The construction was simple but solid, each piece of furniture testifying to the skill of his hands. In the living room, a wooden sofa with cotton cushions. In the kitchen, a peroba wood table that seated four. In the room he had designated for her, a narrow but comfortable bed and a dresser with mirror where she could arrange her few clothes. "Each has their own room," Joaquim explained, as if it were important to establish from the beginning the limits of the arrangement. "If you decide to stay to discuss marriage, we'll have time to get to know each other properly as God commands." It was when Maria went to the bedroom window that she saw for the first time, in all its terrifying magnitude, the cliff that practically touched the house's foundations. The abyss opened like a wound in the earth, and down below, among the stones and wild vegetation, the stream sang its ancestral song. Other women had looked through the same window and seen only danger and madness. Maria Conceição, however, saw in the precipice's proximity a perfect metaphor for the human condition. We all live on the edge of our own abysses. Only some have the courage to recognize that truth. "Aren't you afraid?" asked Joaquim, who had attentively observed her reaction. Maria turned to him with a smile that carried all the wisdom acquired in the difficult years in Goiânia. "Mr. Joaquim, whoever has already fallen to the bottom of the well learns that what's important isn't the distance of the fall. It's having someone to help you climb back up." In that instant, under the golden light of evening, something stirred in Joaquim Batista's heart, a sensation he had thought buried forever, alongside Rosa and Isabel. The days following Maria's arrival flowed like a river, finding a new course. with the naturalness of those who discover that two solitudes can complement each other without cancelling each other out. The routine established itself unhurriedly, woven from simple gestures that gradually built their own language between them. Maria woke before dawn, accustomed to the boarding house schedule, and prepared coffee on the wood stove while Joachim organized his tools in the workshop attached to the house. The coffee's perfume mixed with the aroma of wood and humid dawn, creating an olfactory symphony that marked the beginning of each day. During the mornings while Joachim worked, carving, planing, fitting pieces with the precision of one who converses with wood, Maria took care of the house and resumed her sewing work. She had discovered, in a box kept in the room, some fabrics Rosa had left, and Joachim, after a moment of painful hesitation, asked her to use them as she wished. The first pieces Maria created with those fabrics were tablecloths embroidered with simple motifs, cerrado flowers, birds in flight, geometric patterns she invented while her fingers danced over the fabric. When Joachim saw the result, his eyes filled with contained tears. "Rosa also liked to embroider," he said, delicately touching one of the tablecloths, "but her embroidery was different. Yours has strength." As if each stitch were an affirmation of life. It was also during those first days that Maria discovered Joachim knew how to read, but with difficulty, like someone who had learned late and didn't practice regularly. In the evenings after dinner, when they sat on the porch to escape the day's heat, she began to read aloud passages from the Bible she carried in her luggage. Maria's voice had a natural musicality that transformed even the most arid passages into poetry. Joachim would close his eyes and let himself be lulled by the words, feeling that something dormant for years was beginning to awaken in his chest. "Read the one about the valley of dry bones," he asked her one of those nights, and Maria understood it was no coincidence. It was the story of a man who needed to believe in resurrection. During the day, while Joachim worked, Maria went out to get to know the village. San Sebastián do Araguaia was small, a church, a general store, some scattered houses, but the people received her with the respectful curiosity reserved for those who arrive from afar. Donna Benedita, not the one from the boarding house, but another Benedita, wife of the local merchant, was the first to commission work. She wanted an altar cloth for the chapel, and when she saw Maria's embroidery, her eyes sparkled like someone discovering an unexpected treasure. "Child, you have blessed hands," said the lady. "Work like this isn't seen even in Goiânia." Other commissions followed: baptism clothes, trousseau quilts, details on men's garments. Maria discovered that in the interior, far from the prejudices and whispers of the big city, her talent was recognized and valued for what it really was. It was on one of those afternoons, while embroidering a shirt for Joachim, a gift she planned to give him at the end of the week, that the sound of approaching horses interrupted the house's peace. Maria raised her eyes and saw a corpulent man, mounted on a chestnut horse, accompanied by two henchmen. The visitor dismounted with the arrogance of one accustomed to being obeyed, and even before Joachim emerged from the workshop, Maria knew that man brought no good intentions. "Mr. Joachim," shouted the visitor with a powerful voice, "I need to speak with you about a business that should have been resolved long ago." The man who had planted himself in front of the house like a human-shaped storm was Colonel Baltazar Moreira, a landowner whose name was whispered throughout the interior of Goiás with a mixture of respect and fear. At 45 years old, Baltazar carried in his robust body and thunderous voice the authority of one who had never accepted no as a definitive answer. Joachim emerged from the workshop wiping his hands on a cloth, and Maria immediately perceived the tension that stiffened his shoulders. It was obvious this wasn't the first time the two had met, and that previous encounters hadn't been friendly. "Colonel Baltazar," said Joachim with icy courtesy, "what brings you here?" "Come now, mister." "Joachim, you know very well why I'm here." Baltazar smiled, but it was a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I came to talk about that proposal I made 3 years ago. I'm offering 30 contos de reis for your property. It's good money, enough for you to establish yourself well away from here." Maria, observing from the porch, noticed how the colonel's two henchmen positioned themselves strategically, one on each side, like those who block possible escape routes. Instinct told her this wasn't a simple commercial negotiation. "I've said before and I say again," Joachim responded, keeping his voice firm. "This land is not for sale." Baltazar's face darkened like a storm cloud. "Mr. Joachim, you're being stubborn without reason. What use is this little house on the edge of the ravine? Dangerous place, isolated. It's no place for civilized people to live." That's when the colonel noticed Maria on the porch. His small, aggressive eyes examined her from head to toe with the shamelessness of one evaluating merchandise. "Well, I see you found company," he said, and there was something unpleasant in his tone. "I hope the young lady knows what she's getting into, living in a place like this." Joachim stepped forward and Maria saw his fists clench. "Leave the lady out of this, Colonel." Balthazar laughed with disdain. "Easy, Mr. Joachim. I'm not disrespecting anyone. I'm just saying that a man with responsibilities should think better about his decisions." He moved closer, lowering his voice to a threatening tone. "Especially when those decisions can affect the safety of innocent people." Maria felt a chill down her spine. She didn't need to know the power relations in the interior deeply to understand that this was a threat disguised as advice. "What do you really want, Colonel?" asked Joachim, tired of the roundabout talk. Balthazar walked to the edge of the cliff, contemplating the stream running below. "That little river, Mr. Joachim, is born on my property and flows into the Araguaia River, passing through all my ranches. But there's a stretch, precisely this one here, where it curves and leaves my land. To take my cattle to the southern pastures, I need direct access to this point." The truth finally emerged like sun through clouds. It wasn't the house Balthazar wanted. It was total control over the stream, the access that Joachim's property denied him. "For years I tolerated this situation," the colonel continued. "But now I'm expanding business. I bought more land to the south, more cattle. I need that access. You're hindering the region's progress out of pure caprice." Joachim breathed deeply before responding. "This land is mine by right, Colonel. I bought it and registered it at the notary. As long as I live, no one will take me from here." The silence that followed was heavy as molten lead. Balthazar looked long at Joachim, then at Maria, and finally at the house that defied the abyss. "Think carefully, Mr. Joachim," he said finally, walking back to his horse. "Think very carefully. A man alone can be brave, but when he has other people to protect, well, courage can sometimes turn into irresponsibility." He mounted the horse with the agility of one who had spent his life in the saddle and signaled for the henchmen to follow him. Before leaving, however, he turned once more toward the house. 30 contos de reis, Mr. Joachim. The offer stands for 1 more month. After that," Balthazar shrugged with false indifference. "After that, perhaps you'll discover there are more unpleasant ways to resolve land issues." The 3 riders departed, raising a cloud of red dust, but the shadow of threat they left behind was denser than any sandstorm. The night following Colonel Balthazar's visit was one of the longest in Maria Conceição's life. After the silent dinner, where only the clinking of cutlery broke the tension that floated like heavy smoke, she retired to her room, but sleep didn't come. Through the window, she could see Joachim on the porch, smoking his pipe while contemplating the abyss. The tobacco ember lit and dimmed in the darkness like a solitary firefly, and Maria understood he too was struggling against turbulent thoughts. The colonel's words echoed in her mind. A man alone can be brave, but when he has other people to protect, the threat had been clear as crystal water. Maria's presence increased Joachim's vulnerability, gave him a weak point the powerful landowner could exploit. Maria knew men like Balthazar. She had encountered urban versions of him in Goiânia, people who used power and influence as tools to break the resistance of the weaker. The difference was that in the city, violence disguised itself as civility. In the interior, it could be more direct, more brutal. Around midnight, unable to bear the agony of indecision any longer, Maria put on a robe and went to the porch. Joachim was still there, but had already extinguished his pipe and remained motionless like a statue contemplating the darkness. "Can't sleep?" she asked softly. Joachim turned, and in the pale moonlight Maria saw in his eyes a sadness that went beyond concern about Balthazar. It was the sadness of a man preparing for another loss. "Donna Maria," he said with a hoarse voice, "I need to speak with you." They sat side by side on the wooden bench Joachim had built on the porch, the same bench where Rosa used to sit to watch the sunset. Between them, the respectful space they had maintained since her arrival seemed charged with energy, like the air before a storm. "You're going to ask me to leave," said Maria, not as a question, but as a statement. Joachim closed his eyes in pain. "It's not that I want to, Donna Maria, I don't have the right to put you in danger." "And who said the decision is only yours?" The question came out with more force than Maria intended, echoing in the night's silence like a challenge. Joachim looked at her surprised, not expecting that reaction. "How so?" Maria turned to face him directly, and in the moon's silver light her eyes shone with a determination he hadn't seen before. "Mr. Joachim, All my life, men made decisions for me. My father chose that I would be a seamstress instead of studying. My employers decided when my work was good enough. Goiânia society determined I was guilty without giving me the right of defense. Her voice gained intensity. Now, you want to decide alone whether I stay or go? Joachim opened his mouth to respond, but she raised her hand asking for silence. Let me tell you something. When I was a child, my mother taught me there are two types of fear, the kind that protects us and the kind that paralyzes us. Fear of Colonel Balthazar is the second type. If I run from him now, I'll spend the rest of my life running from men like him. The wind blew through the trees, bringing the perfume of flowers blooming in the dawn and the distant sound of the stream singing in the bottom of the cliff. Maria stood and walked to the porch railing, contemplating the dark vastness that extended before the house. Besides, she continued without turning, there's something else. What? Maria breathed deeply, feeling she was about to take the most courageous step of her life. In Goiânia, I woke every morning knowing I would have to face looks of contempt, malicious whispers, doors that would close in my face. Here, for the first time in years, I wake knowing someone received me for what I am, not for what others say I am. She turned to Joachim, and there were silent tears running down her face. You gave me something I thought I had lost forever, the chance to start over, and now you want me to give up the first true happiness I've found because a powerful man decided we don't have the right to it? Joachim slowly stood, walking to her. When he extended his hand and delicately touched Maria's face, she didn't pull away. Donna Maria, he said with an embattled voice, are you sure about what you're saying? I'm sure. Maria covered his hand with hers. If you'll accept me, I want to stay. I want to face Balthazar and any other obstacle by your side. I want to build a life here. In this house everyone considers dangerous because I've learned that sometimes it's necessary to live dangerously close to happiness. In that instant, under the moonlight and before the abyss that symbolized both danger and freedom, Joaquim Batista understood that Maria Conceição Santos wasn't just the fourth woman to arrive at his house. She was the first who had chosen to stay for love, not desperation. 3 days after Maria's decision to remain, the sky began to darken with an intensity that foreboded more than common rain. Clouds accumulated like black mountains on the horizon, charged with electricity that made the air vibrate and hair stand on end. Joachim knew well the signs of the great Cerrado storms. He had lived through one of them 8 years before, when he lost Rosa and Isabel. Throughout the day he moved around the house with growing agitation, checking tiles, reinforcing windows, organizing buckets for possible leaks. It's going to be a strong rain, he told Maria, while nailing extra boards to a window, the kind that makes the whole world tremble. Maria observed the preparations with interest, but without the fear he expected to see. During her years in the city, she had learned that storms pass. The important thing was not to be shaken by them. The first lightning cut the sky at the end of the afternoon, followed by thunder that made the entire house shudder. Soon after, the first drops began to fall, heavy as silver coins striking the clay roof. In a matter of minutes, the rain transformed into a deluge that seemed to want to wash the world. Water plummeted from the clouds in thick curtains, transforming the yard into a lagoon and the cliff into a furious waterfall. Joachim lit the oil lamp and closed all windows, but even so the wind managed to enter through the cracks, making the flame dance nervously. The storm's sound was deafening, rain drumming on the roof, wind howling through the trees, thunder exploding like cannons in the sky. It was when a particularly intense lightning bolt illuminated the entire night that Maria saw Joachim pale and quickly head to the back window. She followed him and understood the reason for his concern. The rain was causing the cliff earth to collapse in small avalanches, and some of those avalanches passed dangerously close to the house foundations. It's like that night, Joachim murmured, and Maria perceived he wasn't seeing just the present storm, but reliving the tragedy of the past. That's how it began. Another thunder exploded right above the house, so close it made the window panes tinkle. Maria saw Joachim shrink as if he had taken a physical blow, and understood he was being tormented not just by real danger, but by the ghosts of 8 years ago. Without hesitating, she approached him and took his hand. At first Joachim resisted, tense as a violin string, but gradually relaxed under her firm and warm touch. Joachim, said Maria. It was the first time she called him by name without the formal sir. This house is different. You built it on solid rock, remember? And this time you're not alone. As if to test Maria's affirmation, lightning followed immediately. by thunder made the house sway slightly. Instinctively, Joachim embraced her, protecting her with his body, and Maria let herself be enveloped by that protection she hadn't known for years. They remained embraced in the center of the room while the storm roared outside, and gradually Maria felt Joachim's breathing calm. It was as if her presence were an anchor that kept him firm in the present, preventing him from drowning in painful memories. "It won't happen again," she whispered in his ear. "This house will resist. We will resist." The rain continued for hours, but now they faced it together. They talked about everything and nothing, about his childhood on a nearby ranch, about her sewing dreams, about books they'd like to read, about projects they had to improve the house. It was during a pause between thunderclaps that Joachim said, almost whispering, "Maria Conceição, I think I'm falling in love with you." Maria raised her face to look at him, and in the lamp's golden light her eyes shone like stars. "Me too, Joachim. Me too." The kiss that followed was soft, like the rain still falling, but charged with all the passion that had grown silently between them. It wasn't the desperate kiss of two solitudes meeting, but the hopeful kiss of two souls discovering in each other the possibility of true love. When they separated, the storm still roared outside, but it no longer frightened them. They had discovered that together they could face any tempest. "Maria Conceição Santos," said Joachim, with voice choked with emotion, "will you marry me, truly, forever, to face together everything that comes?" The morning following the storm dawned washed and golden, like a fulfilled promise. The air was impregnated with the perfume of damp earth and flowers that had bloomed during the night, and the entire world seemed to have been renewed by the purifying rain. Maria woke in her room with her heart still racing from the memory of the kiss and Joachim's words. The marriage proposal resonated in her mind like celestial music, but she wanted to be sure it hadn't been just an impulse born from the moment's intensity. Joachim was already in the kitchen when she left her room, preparing coffee as he did every morning, but there was something different in his movements, a lightness she hadn't noticed before, as if an invisible weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "Good morning, Maria Conceição," he said, and the way he pronounced her name was charged with new tenderness. "Good morning, Joachim." They looked at each other across the small kitchen, and Maria saw in his eyes that the previous night's proposal hadn't been the fruit of momentary emotion. It was real, sincere, lasting. "About what we discussed last night," he began, but Maria interrupted him with a smile that illuminated the entire house. "Yes, Joachim Batista, yes, I want to marry you." The smile that opened on his face was like the sun rising after a long winter night. Joachim crossed the kitchen in 2 strides and took her in his arms, spinning her in the air like 2 children celebrating a marvelous discovery. When he set her back down, they looked at each other like those who still don't completely believe in their own happiness. "Then let's arrange the papers," said Joachim, already making plans. "Talk to Father João, schedule the ceremony, invite the village people." "Easy," laughed Maria, delicately touching his face. "We have time. Let's do things right with all the dignity our love deserves." The days that followed were of preparation and mutual discovery. Maria continued attending to sewing commissions, which had increased considerably after the region's women got to know her work, while Joachim built new furniture for the house that would now truly belong to both. He carved a new dresser for their room. Yes, now it would be their room, with drawers that fit with the perfection of one who knows intimately each fiber of the wood. Maria embroidered quilts and curtains, transforming the simple house into a welcoming dwelling that radiated human warmth. Father João, an elderly man with a white beard who had served the parish for over 20 years, received the couple with genuine joy. He had known Joachim since childhood and had accompanied his sadness after Rosa and Isabel's death. "My son," said the priest, placing his hands on Joachim's shoulders, "it's a joy to see you find happiness again. God doesn't send us more suffering than we can bear, and also doesn't deny us grace when we reach the end of our trials." The wedding date was set for September, when the rains would have passed and the roads would again be passable for guests coming from afar. During this engagement period, Joachim and Maria established a routine of delicacy and mutual respect that built day by day the foundations of their love. He continued sleeping in the small room, she in the larger one, but now they allowed themselves small intimacies. A good-night kiss, hands intertwined during prayers, embraces that naturally prolonged. It was on one of those August afternoons, while Maria embroidered and Joachim carved a frame for the bedroom mirror, that Donna Benedita, the one from the village, not the boarding house, appeared with a proposal that deeply moved them. "Dear ones," said the kind lady, "all we women of the region want to prepare a wedding party for you. Nothing too elaborate, but something to mark the joy we feel seeing two good people find happiness." The party would be at the church after the ceremony, with typical foods prepared by all families and music played by men who knew how to strum guitar and accordion. September arrived dressed in sun and hope, and with it the day when Joaquim Batista and Maria Concepción Santos would seal before God and men a love that had flourished on the edge of the abyss and proven stronger than any storm. September 15th, 1911, dawned with the bluest sky Maria Concepción had ever seen. It was as if the universe itself had conspired to create the perfect setting for her wedding, painting the world with vibrant colors that made everything seem like a picture from dreams. Maria had awakened before dawn at Donna Benedita's house, where she had spent her last night as a single woman according to tradition. The village women had gathered to help her prepare, transforming the moment into a feminine celebration full of laughter, advice, and blessings. The wedding dress had been created by Maria's own hands during the previous weeks, a simple but elegant model of white cotton, embroidered with small flowers that seemed to have been embroidered by angels. The veil was a piece of lace that Donna Benedita had saved from her own wedding, lent with tears of joy in her eyes. "Child," said the good lady while adjusting the veil, "you're radiant as the sun itself. Joaquim will be speechless when he sees you." At San Sebastián de Araguaia church, Joaquim waited by the altar wearing the dark suit that had belonged to his father, tailored by Maria's skillful hands in the previous weeks. Father João, dressed in his finest ceremonial vestments, smiled with the happiness of one who celebrates not just a sacrament, but love's triumph over adversity. The small church was fuller than ever before. All the region's families had come to witness the union, transforming the simple building into a true cathedral of human love. Field flowers adorned the altar, and special candles illuminated the environment with golden, sacred light. When Maria entered the church, walking alone but carrying with her the blessings of all the women who had adopted her as daughter, a respectful silence took over the environment. Joaquim, who had turned to see her approach, felt his heart leap in his chest as if it were the first time he saw her. She walked slowly, savoring each step toward the altar where the man waited, whom she had learned to love not just with passion, but with all the depth of her soul. Her eyes met his and remained connected throughout the walk, as if they were communicating in a language only they understood. When Maria reached the altar, Joaquim extended his hand to receive her, and she took it with the confidence of one who had finally found safe harbor after years sailing stormy seas. Father João began the ceremony with a moving homily about love reborn from sadness's ashes, about the courage of two hearts that had opened themselves to a second chance at happiness. His words echoed through the church like blessings falling upon the assembly. "Joaquim Batista," asked the priest at the solemn moment of vows, "do you accept Maria Concepción Santos as your wife, to love and respect her, in joy and sorrow, in sickness and health, in wealth and poverty, until death separates you?" "I do," responded Joaquim with a firm voice carrying all his heart's certainty. "Maria Concepción Santos, do you accept Joaquim Batista as your husband, to love and respect him in joy and sorrow, in sickness and health, in wealth and poverty, until death separates you?" "I do," said Maria, and her voice sounded like celestial music through the church corridors. The ring exchange was made with simple gold bands Joaquim had commissioned from the goldsmith in Annapolis, perfect circles symbolizing love without end or flaw. When Father João pronounced the final words, "By the power conferred upon me by God and the Holy Church, I declare you husband and wife," the church exploded in applause and tears of joy. The kiss that sealed the union was long and tender, witnessed by God and men, forever kept in everyone's memory as a symbol that true love always finds a way. The party that followed in the church square was a celebration that marked an era in San Sebastián de Araguaia's history. Improvised tables groaned under the weight of delicious foods prepared by all families. Guitar players played music that made couples dance under the stars, and until the early hours of morning joy infected everyone. But the true celebration happened when the newlyweds returned to the house on the cliff's edge and, for the first time as husband and wife, contemplated together the abyss that no longer represented danger, but the infinite vastness of possibilities opening before their love. The happiness of Joaquim and Maria's first months of marriage had spread through the region like wildflower perfume. Even Colonel Balthazar, who had departed for Mato Grosso shortly after the wedding to expand his cattle business, seemed to have forgotten his obsession with the property on the cliff's edge. May 1912 brought two blessings: the discovery that Maria was expecting a child, and news that Baltazar had sold all his Goiás lands to establish himself permanently on the western frontier. Life seemed finally to smile on the couple, who worked side by side building not just a home, but a future full of promises. It was on a golden August afternoon, when Maria embroidered baby clothes while Joaquim built a hardwood crib, that tranquility was broken by the sound of horses approaching at desperate gallop. Zé Mineiro arrived raising a cloud of dust, his face marked by urgency and fear. He dismounted before the horse even stopped completely and ran toward the house. "Mr. Joaquim, Donna Maria," he shouted, panting. "You need to know something happening in town." The couple gathered on the porch, and Maria instinctively brought her hand to her belly, where their first child grew, as if sensing bad news approached. "Speak, Zé Mineiro," said Joaquim, preparing for the worst. "Colonel Baltazar returned," said the cart driver, still trying to catch his breath. "But he didn't come alone. He brought some men from Mato Grosso, rough-looking people. And there's more. He's spreading around town that you two are living on his land with false documents." Maria felt her blood freeze. It was a serious accusation that, even being false, could cause serious problems in a region where the powerful's word carried the weight of law. "What false documents?" asked Joaquim, indignant. "He's saying the land purchase paper you have is worthless, that it was made by a notary that didn't have authority to register properties. He says the land was always his, and you're invaders." Joaquim ran inside the house and returned with a metal box where he kept his most important documents. With trembling hands, he withdrew the property purchase deed, the same paper he had shown years before when Baltazar made his first attack. "This document was registered at the official notary in Annapolis," he said, examining the paper. "Everything's legal. Everything's correct." Zé Mineiro shook his head gravely. "Maybe so, Mr. Joaquim, but Baltazar brought a lawyer from Goiânia who's saying there's a new law about land registration, says documents made before 1905 need to be revalidated, and since you didn't do that." The sentence hung in the air like a palpable threat. Maria immediately understood the trap. Baltazar had found a legal loophole, real or invented, to question the legitimacy of Joaquim's property. "There's more," continued Zé Mineiro. "Baltazar is offering rewards for anyone who brings information about you. He wants to know about Donna Maria's pregnancy, about how much money you have saved, about the sewing work she does outside." Maria felt a chill down her spine. It wasn't just the land Baltazar wanted. He was mapping their vulnerabilities, looking for ways to pressure the couple through their weak points. "And worst of all," said Zé Mineiro, lowering his voice, "he brought an eviction order. Says if you don't leave voluntarily in 15 days, he'll send his men to come get you." The silence that followed was heavy as molten lead. Maria looked at Joaquim and saw in his eyes the same determination that had conquered her from their first meeting. "Zé Mineiro," said Joaquim finally, "thank you for warning us, but you can tell the colonel something from me." "What?" Joaquim stood, walking to the edge of the porch, where the cliff could be seen opening like a wound in the earth. When he turned, there was a dangerous gleam in his eyes that Maria hadn't seen before. "You can tell him Joaquim Batista doesn't leave this land even dead, and if he wants to try to take us from here, he'll have to go over my dead body." Maria approached her husband and took his hand, feeling the strength emanating from him like heat from a forge. "And you can also say," she added with a firm voice, "that Maria Conceição Batista doesn't abandon her house or her husband. We came here to stay, and it's here we're going to raise our child." Zé Mineiro looked at the couple with a mixture of admiration and fear, understanding he was before two people willing to fight to the end for the happiness they had built together on the edge of the abyss. The 15 days following Zé Mineiro's warning were the most tense in the couple's life, but also those that most revealed the strength of their union. Joaquim and Maria didn't hide, nor let themselves be defeated by the threat. On the contrary, they faced each day with the dignity of those who fight for a just cause. Joaquim sought out Sergeant Firmino, a retired military man who lived in the village and maintained good contacts with regional authorities. The old soldier, who knew firsthand the intimidatory tactics used by unscrupulous landowners, offered immediate help. "Mr. Joaquim," said Firmino after carefully examining the property documents, "your papers are perfect. That revalidation story is pure nonsense. What Baltazar is doing is illegal coercion, and I can guarantee the state authorities won't like it when they find out." Meanwhile, Maria demonstrated courage that surprised everyone. Instead of hiding at home, she continued serving her clients and even increased her embroidery production, as if wanting to prove she wouldn't be intimidated by threats. "Donna Maria," Donna Benedita said one afternoon, "aren't you afraid?" "Yes, I am afraid," Maria responded frankly, "but I'm even more afraid of letting men like Balthazar destroy the happiness I built with so much work." On the 10th day, the unexpected happened. Sergeant Firmino arrived at Joachim's house, bringing with him an elegant man with graying moustaches and city clothes. "Mr. Joachim, Donna Maria," said Firmino with a victorious smile, "I present Dr. Augusto Mendes, prosecutor for the state of Goiás." Dr. Mendes explained that state authorities had received complaints about Balthazar's actions and decided to investigate. The conclusion was devastating for the colonel. Besides having no right whatsoever to Joachim's property, he was committing various crimes by trying to force an illegal eviction. "Mr. Balthazar has been ordered to immediately cease all actions against you," said Dr. Mendes. "If he insists, he'll be prosecuted for illegal coercion, formation of private militia, and attempted dispossession." The news spread through the region like fire in dry grass. In a matter of hours, everyone knew that Joachim and Maria had won the battle against the powerful colonel. Balthazar departed the same day, taking his henchmen and leaving behind only the bitter trail of a humiliating defeat. Before leaving, however, he sent a message through Zé Mineiro, a tacit recognition that he had underestimated the strength of union between that couple. "Tell Joachim he chose a woman of fiber, and that the land is theirs by right and merit." José Batista was born on an October morning in 1912, when the Cerrado was dressed in yellow flowers and the air smelled of spring and renewed hopes. The boy's first cry echoed through the house like celestial music, announcing that a new life was beginning in that home, built between the abyss and love. Joachim held his son in his arms with tears of joy running down his face, and Maria, even exhausted from childbirth, smiled with the happiness of one who sees dreams materialize. 2 years later, in 1913, the family moved to a new house that Joachim built 3 kilometers from the village, on safe ground near the stream. It was a larger, more comfortable house, suitable for a family that was growing and prospering. At the old house site, next to the cliff, they built a small chapel where Rosa and Isabel's remains rested. It wasn't a symbol of sadness, but of gratitude, a way to honor the past while embracing the future. In 1916, Ana Batista was born, a girl with golden hair like her mother's and bright eyes like her father's. The new house filled with children's laughter, joyful running around, all the music of life flowering in its fullness. Maria had become the most sought-after seamstress in the entire region, her embroidery famous even in Goiânia. Joachim had expanded his workshop and now provided furniture to several neighboring villages. The prosperity they had built together was fruit not just of work but of love that had transformed 2 lonely lives into a happy, united family. One afternoon in 1919, while contemplating their children playing in the new house's yard, José with his 7 years teaching Ana, 3 years old, to make straw dolls, Joachim and Maria remembered the journey that had brought them there. "Do you regret it?" asked Joachim. "Staying in that dangerous house on the edge of the abyss?" Maria smiled, taking her husband's hand in hers. "Joachim Batista," she said, "it was precisely by having the courage to live dangerously close to happiness that we found this marvelous life. Sometimes it's necessary to balance on the edge of the precipice to discover we know how to fly." And there, under Goiás's infinite sky, surrounded by children who were living proof of their love and the prosperity they had built together, Joachim and Maria understood they had found much more than a new beginning. They had discovered that true love has the power to transform even the most dangerous places into safe homes where happiness can flourish.